Hello listeners. This is the reading of the Sabbath School lesson for the fourth and final quarter of 2022.
The series is titled On Death, Dying and the Future Hope. The author is Dr. Alberto Tim, while your readers are Percy and Sibylla Harold. Welcome to lesson number 9, titled Contrary Passages. It's ready for teaching on November 26, and I'm Percy Harold. Sunday, November 20, The Rich Man and Lazarus. Read Luke chapter 16, verses 19 to 31. Why is this story not a literal description of the afterlife? Let's begin in Luke 16 at verse 19. There was a certain man who was clothed in purple and fine linen, and fed sumptuously every day. But there was a certain beggar named Lazarus, full of sores, who was laid at the gate, desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. So it was that the beggar died, and was carried by the angels to Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried, and being in torments in Hades, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham afar off and Lazarus in his bosom. Then he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus, that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. But Abraham said, Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now he is comforted, and you are tormented. And besides all this, between us and you there is a great gulf fixed, so that those who want to pass from here to you cannot, nor can those from there pass to us. Then he said, I beg you, therefore, Father, that you would send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, that he may testify to them, lest they also come to this place of torment. Abraham said to him, They have Moses and the prophets, let them hear them. And he said, No, Father Abraham, but if one goes to them from the dead, they will repent. But he said to him, If they do not hear Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rise from the dead. Some scholars have suggested that Luke 16, 19 to 31 should be interpreted literally, that is, as describing the state of the dead. But this view would lead to several unbiblical conclusions and would contradict many of the passages that we have already looked at. First, we would have to admit that heaven and hell are close enough to allow a conversation between the dwellers of both places, as we just saw in those verses 23 to 31. We also would have to suppose that in the afterlife, while the body lies in the grave, there remains a conscious form of the spiritual soul with eyes, a finger, and a tongue, and which even feels thirst, as we saw in verses 23 and 24. If this passage were a description of the human state in death, then heaven would certainly not be a place of joy and happiness, because the saved could closely follow the endless sufferings of their lost loved ones and even dialogue with them, as we saw in this story. How could a mother be happy in heaven while beholding the incessant agonies of her beloved child in hell? In such a context, it would be virtually impossible for God's promise of no more sorrow, crying, and pain to be fulfilled, as we read in Revelation 21, verse 4. And God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. Because of such incoherence, many biblical scholars regard the story of the rich man and Lazarus as a parable from which not every detail can be interpreted literally. George E. Ladd, though not an Adventist, certainly sounds like one here when he says that this story was probably, and here's a quote, a parable which made use of current Jewish thinking and is not intended to teach anything about the state of the dead. And that's from Eschatology in the New Bible Dictionary, page 388. The parable of the rich man and Lazarus presents a sharp contrast between a well-dressed rich man and a certain beggar named Lazarus full of sores. We read that in verses 19 and 20 of chapter 16 of Luke. The account teaches that 1. Status and social recognition in the present are not the criteria for the future reward, and 2. The eternal destiny of each person is decided in this life and cannot be reversed in the afterlife, as we read in verses 25 and 26. But Abraham said, Son, remember that in your lifetime you received your good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now he is comforted, and you are tormented. And besides all this, between us and you there is a great gulf fixed, so that those who want to pass from here to you cannot, nor can those from there pass to us. And so to finish the day, but he said to them, If they do not hear Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded, though one rise from the dead. That was verse 31. What message from Jesus' powerful words should we take for ourselves regarding the authority of the Bible and how we respond to it? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful.